Hi everyone, Jay Barker here, mum of three and general crafter, mainly focusing on crochet. And today, no different, we're going to do crochet again, and we're going to do the second video in what I am intending to be a main series of this channel, AI to reality. So we've already done one, this one, and I have to admit, after I advertised the video, I was advertising on Facebook, I got a lot of gatekeeping activity. People saying it doesn't look right. People saying, oh, you need to use a different type of thread. But that wasn't the point of the video. The video was to show how this image can be translated into an actual real project. And that's what I'm going to do again today. So I found this image on Pinterest. When you actually click on this image to get to the free pattern, the free pattern is this. How is that representative of what is actually available? I have got absolutely no problem with AI generated images. None at all. I mean, hell, my logo, I used an AI generation site to give me some ideas, and then I formulated my own logo. The background I used, this one, that's a complete AI mock-up because, well, that would have taken months to crochet. And my end card is also an AI image I created with a few prompts. I don't have a problem with AI images. I have a problem is when it's being used to trick people. Like, I have no idea if you click on this link and go through to that page could be putting a virus into your computer, or it could be trying to steal personal information. To be honest, with that site, I think it was just trying to grab information through the cookie system. But it does open it up to abuse. So I'm going to leave that aside, put a pin in it, because I do like these AI generated images of crochet projects. They're giving me loads of ideas and inspiration. So that's why I want to do this series. So let's see how far I can get in replicating this seahorse. And my pattern will be available, but unfortunately it won't be free because, you know, time and everything. But I don't know, it'll probably only be a couple of quid or something like that. I mean, I think my most expensive pattern is a £5 that I've got up on Ravelry so far. But leave that aside and let's get on with this make. As always, I always start off with a sketch just to help me get a feel of the project. And if you've watched any of my other crochet videos, you know oftentimes what I do is I crochet directly on top of an image to get the shapes right. I won't be doing this time as I had to use so many different colours of threads. One of them just ended up being in Aran weight, and so I decided just to scale everything up. So if this pattern, well, hopefully when it's all written, if it was made in double knit yarn, it probably would be about the size of the drawing. Here's an example of all of the colours I used. Colour blocking like this, it's not really something I would do for a reference, but I felt it was just better than going backwards and forwards to the image on my phone, and just so I knew which colours for which yarns I was going to personally use. Eye on this A3 piece of paper as we go through this video
Normally I'll have a separate sketch book or notepad with me to write notes on, but for some reason I just decided to throw absolutely everything on this page. These are the fins of the seahorse. Are they called fins? I'm not entirely sure. But there were several colours that were worked in rows for these, and then the pink detailing was crocheted onto the top. These are just some hand embroidered details on the end of the fin. I did end up making two slightly different designs for the fins, and I did prefer this version without the pink line across. There are also back pieces done in the main dark blue colour, just to give the fins some more structure. This next part is the eye detailing. It simply ended up being chain stitches being slip stitched into each other with a toy eye placed in as well. It's very simple, but I think it did give the desired effect. Right, onto the head, and we are starting at the end of the snout of the seahorse, or the seahorse's mouth. I'm not entirely sure of the full anatomy. Starting off in a dark blue and creating an oval, then moving on to the snout, and then we had increases from the snout into the front of the face of the seahorse. After a few rows of no increases or decreases along the top of the seahorse's head, there are a few decreased rows just to give the desired shape of the seahorse itself. Here I've started to work on the back of the seahorse's head. This is one of the few parts of this pattern that isn't worked on the round. It's worked in a semicircle of rows going backwards and forwards, just so I could get the shallow curve at the back of the seahorse's head. Once we reach the chin area of the seahorse, rounds start appearing again and remain in place until the lower tail section begins. Important note to make as well, at the end of each one of the semicircle rows, I am slip stitching into the head of the seahorse just to help secure it and to limit assembly stitches later on. When doing this part of the head, I honestly thought the rest of the seahorse was going to be really easy and this was going to be the trickiest part, but the curve at the end of the tail is going to prove to be problematic in this as well. Jumping ahead to stuffing the upper portion of the body, like I said, once the back of the head had the right shaping, it was simply repeating rounds, 4 rows for each colour. Some increases obviously to do the rounded tummy, but a lot of the rows were simply repeating the same technique of having the stitches on the side that needed to be taller, such as triple stitches, and smaller stitches such as double stitches on the sides that needed less height. And of course there were decreases involved as we got past the tummy and needed to start reducing the width going towards the tail section. Also the curve had to be switched directions, but again this was very simple once one row was figured out, as it could be repeated again and again. This is an interesting technique I used a couple of years ago. The curve on the bottom of the seahorse's tail is quite dramatic, so instead of continuing on from the main piece, I created this circle which is then nipped in half, and then you continue working rounds on one side of the circle. So essentially this circle has two ends on it. Both of these ends can then be worked to create two sides of any sort of tube-like section which has a dramatic curve in it. So I'm using this for the base of the curve on the seahorse's tail, and to use one side to join to the actual body while the other side goes forward, decreasing to create the loop of the tail itself. For this make and for the last few makes, I've stopped just trying to keep count of my rows with a clicky stitch counter, and I've actually been leaving the stitch markers in, so that way I've got more control when having to unpick and correct rows and rounds. Right, the end of the seahorse's tail, I decided to do it as a full circle, but in a sort of off circle shape. I have to admit that the end result kind of reminded me of a nautilus shell. Well, I guess I've got that part of that pattern already written for this then. So this was a complete circle, or circle-ish shape, that was stuffed and then attached directly onto the end of the seahorse's tail. This section of the tail has still been worked separately from the circle piece that was made. So here I'm just adding a few extra rows to the base of the seahorse before attaching the tail to the tail, I guess. Just running some slip stitches through it. I did opt to actually stitch the tail spiral into place just because I wasn't completely happy with the way it was lying. I guess if it was smaller, I could have put wire into the tail to give it a bit more structure and flexibility. Maybe something to keep in mind when I move on to the written pattern. Onto the spikes. There were 13 of these in total in 2 different sizes. The vast majority of them were in this larger size, which is being made here. I simply made the spikes as little cones, which were all individually slip stitched into place. I opted not to stuff them in the end, as I just didn't feel it was actually needed. Voila! All done. It was so quick. And now the only section we really have left is the white belly. Oh, I've skipped the flower on the head. It was simply done the same way the eyes were, with chain stitches looping back on themselves and being slip stitched back into the middle. This white stomach section was simply increasing on the rows backwards and forwards until it was the right width, then working down for the right length and decreasing the same way that it was increased. And here we are, stitching absolutely everything in place. Do you think these spikes kind of look like midget gems? Magic of editing, voila, all done. So, what do we think, guys? Remember, we weren't aiming for an exact match, we were aiming for what we could create from the image that we had to hand. Please check me out on any of my other socials, DM me if you're interested in pattern release dates, and I will see you here next Wednesday. Bye guys!